Welcome back to Eye on South Asia. So Neil, moving on, last week we've had a spate of fashion news because we had the Fashion Week, and we had the very popular Fashion Night Out, which was started in 2008 actually to boost a very sagging retail economy. Of course, it has taken off since then, and we had the New Yorkers especially were treated to a bevy of beauties, and there were parties and there were fashion shows and a lot of discounts on various shopping goods. But what was very pleasing and what was very reassuring for us was the role of the South Asian community in this. We had our designers who were Seema Singh, and she, along with Geetanjali Singh's collection, included, they held a fashion show, and it included comedian Vidur Kapoor and actor Samrat Chakraberry and Sanjeev Javeri, and they were all dressed in their particular design wear. And this was done by the Shehnai Couture, right?
It's
and
right here in the Fifth Avenue. Right?
Absolutely. Very well known for their high-profile designer stock, and not only in the Indian, not only amongst the Indians, but also by the general population who really like to go to their boutique and shop around.
Right. Nitya, I think what I feel is in the last few years, at least in the later part of the last decade, there is a transition in about the different aspects of India that are being received or appreciated or accepted by the mainstream here. Like in the past, it was mostly dedicated towards what we call the fine arts and the performing arts, which is classical in nature, Ravi Shankar and Vilayat Khan and Zakir Hussain. And suddenly, if you go into the late 90s, when the first Indian girl won the Miss Universe and followed by Miss World, and then of course a runner-up, there is a constant transition in the perception about India and India's effort, or the effort of these top designers from India to showcase the latest lifestyle and fashion, not only in France where they go for the Cannes festival. Right here in the Bryant Park on the 40th Street, we have seen the festival coming up, and like you said, these are the top designers from India who were here, and there were lots of parties, there were lots of exhibition, there was a lot of celebration. And one that keeps on coming again and again is about this Delhi-born and New York City raised jewelry and accessories designer Amrita Singh. You know, every event that I have been talking about or meeting or reading about, her name keeps on popping up. If you see, Amrita was part of the elite group of 30 fashion designers, including Diane, Prabal, and you know, you can check 1, 2, 3, at least the 3 festivals that you talked about. She was one common person in all 3 of them.
Right.
I think let's try to bring her on to the show and talk to her more intimately and find out what is that she is expecting to do in the coming years.
Absolutely, Sunil.
Moving on to our own Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who has opted this year, after I think 2008, he was here last time to address the United Nations, and this time I think he has made a very late decision to come and address the United Nations. And whenever he comes to United Nations, there's always, you know, this side meetings, and this time he would obviously want to have one with President Obama as a minimum, or with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Gilani, Yusuf Raza Gilani. Last time when he was here, I think he met with the President Asif Ali Zardari, but because he has announced very late in this game, the way it is working out is that the day he steps in, the day President Obama goes back to Washington DC, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. You can't have the Prime Minister of India coming to New York and Obama leaving few hours early and missing an opportunity to talk to him, even if it's cosmetic or even it's superficial, if it's very minimal. I think there will be a meeting between them, and I'm sure there'll be a good exchange of between these two parties. And Dr. Manmohan Singh will obviously be meeting Gilani and talking, because the Indo-Pakistan relationship seems to be again going in the right direction. And from what we heard recently, he's also supposed to meet the Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and he is obviously looking forward to meet the newly appointed Nepalese Prime Minister Baburam Bhattarai. So at least this can take some steam and some heat, I think, off Prime Minister Singh, and also put the perspective back into the global picture instead of the India's negative image that has been chasing us for some time on the pollution front. Unfortunately, one more time again, we have some sad crime story about this gentleman Ravindra Arora. He's from eastern New York, actually upstate New York, and caught in drug traffic, and he was carrying 100 kilograms.
That was not just drug trafficking. He's been doing this for a long time and massive quantities at that. The authorities say that that kind of amount would have at least 12 million hits of cocaine.
And you know what that hit means?
Yes.
So and this is the first time he's been picked up. He's been arrested. He had a trailer, and there is a separate compartment. I don't know how they figured it out.
It was a hidden compartment. Yeah, they conducted a very thorough search, and they found it.
They got him.
Absolutely.
And he has revealed that he has been doing this for quite some time. And there is a gentleman on the other end, Parminder Sidhu, who actually has hired him as a driver officially.
Oh.
And he is the one who does the exchange. And Parminder himself is facing extradition in Canada. And now Mr. Ravindra Arora, who runs this huge factory in northern or upstate New York, who will be facing at least 10 years in prison and almost $10 million in fine. I just don't know how we can find a way that this kind of work, at least Indians or our South Asians should not engage in, because one guy goes wrong and we go 100 steps behind.
Absolutely.
So moving on to the next story, if you recall, we had covered it in the past about this Rutgers student, Dharun Ravi. Actually, my daughter also goes to Rutgers, and she knows about him and what happened. Just to remind our own viewers one more time, Dharun Ravi had a roommate who he captured on a remotely controlled camera and viewed it on a laptop with other friends, while this kid who was his roommate was engaged in some kind of activity with his other male friend. And once he found out, that kid was so sensitive, once he found out that he has been exposed, he went to George Washington Bridge and jumped off into the river and committed a suicide. And this kid was obviously arrested, Dharun Ravi, even though he has pleaded not guilty, but I think his chances are very minimal. He's got a good lawyer, Stephen Altman, who has requested for evidence, but as the Superior Court of New Brunswick said, look, we are not interested in the other party who was engaged. The bottom line is he has broken the privilege of privacy, and we are not booking him on the basis of this kid committing suicide, but because
the overall act.
Yeah, right. So he's in trouble. He's been refused by the judge for invasion of privacy and bias, intimidation charges against his fellow roommate. I personally think I will agree with the judge, and such type of incidents should be handled very firmly with a strong hand, so that people respect other people's privacy.
I know. It must have, I feel for him in a certain way, because it could have very well just been a prank. He would have never viewed the magnitude of it. And then once the situation escalated, by the time he realized it, it was obviously too late.
Right. Well, from what I've heard is this kid has a kind of aggressive attitude, notorious nature.
Right.
So this is not something out of the blue he did, and he's also not accepting his mistake, or maybe because of legal reasons. But he has to face the brunt, and his whole family gets shattered, the other family is shattered. Not a good story.
Nope, not at all.
So moving on to the next story of our own friend Harish Saluja. Nitya, Harish is a graduate from IIT Kharagpur, and that is the end of his love with engineering. He has never worked as an engineer, he's never practiced as an engineer, and he lives in Pittsburgh. His love for art is just unbelievable. He's always into painting, into music, into literature. He wrote, directed a film journey with Roshan Seth. He runs a radio station, his own, and he co-hosts, I think this is the longest running radio station, which is the on about music from India, 90.5 FM in Pittsburgh since 2005. It's a non-profit organization. And now he is doing his festival, which is the...
it's called Progression.
Yeah, it's called progression, which is on paintings, representing the changing style and themes of his work over the years, and it includes what they call mandalas.
Right.
Mandala is Sanskrit for
It means a circle, which basically symbolizes continuity.
Oh.
Rather, it's about a man and a woman, and it's in a web of continuity.
Okay.
So, the basic belief is you have to cross 4 circles before you reach a palace which has 4 doors in all directions.
Okay.
So, it's a very ancient belief, and he has conducted works and he's emphasized on that. And another interesting series that he did was Raga, right? It was based on the Indian classical music. And they were paintings and they were abstract representations of his moods and emotions, especially that classified about the Indian classical music.
Well, hats off to him. Harish has stuck to his first love, like we had talked about last week, about Jagmohan Mundra, who is from IIT Bombay and went on to become a very famous filmmaker. He is another case of Harish Saluja from Pittsburgh, and being an IIT graduate from from Kharagpur, he never practiced as an engineer.
I wonder what they teach in IIT that propels these people to move towards fine arts instead.
I hope you're not pointing at somebody here. So, Nitya, moving on to the next story, it's very interesting developments that you've seen last decade, as I would call it. The 2000 to 2010 has been a big transition about the Indo-US relationships, and history records it as appropriately as it will. And now this relationship is taking and moving on to the next level, whereby the trade is being emphasized between the two, because US economy obviously is in trouble, has been in trouble for the last 3 years.
Right.
And there is a huge opportunity which is estimated at about $1 trillion in next 5 years between 2012 and 2017, as it has been stated by the Aspire International Group, and they host international conferences, and now they are hosting one in New York, right here in the New York in our Indian consulate, and they were in the studio for another show of ours called Building Bridges, and they say the private sector needs to contribute 50% of that requirement. Somewhere this money is coming from, and it has a very high return.
Absolutely.
And this is why they are putting this effort to stage this type of infrastructure conference, which will be discussing key issues right here in the heart of New York, and we are covering it tomorrow and day after, which will be inaugurated by very respected Senator Larry Presler, and they expect Diane Farrell, Executive Vice President and Senior Director of US IBC, and VP Agarwal, who is our own Chairman from the Airport Authority of India.
Right.
And there is a buzz, there is a possibility that the ambassador herself, the new ambassador Nirupama Rao, may be inaugurating or stopping by. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed yet, but the conference will offer the most timely opportunity for India to showcase its unshackled sectors of opportunity like airports, roads, bridges, tunnels, urban development, real estate, and finance, thereby offering the delegates and attendees a chance to resolve their apprehensions created recently due to various controversies ranging from environmental scams out of India.
Right.
The focus is on that. And this is a great effort by this group, and we can probably show some of the portions of the interview that we had with the promoter of this conference.
This is being organized by Aspire International Group, okay? And it's to discuss the infrastructure today, India Opportunity 2011 conference. This is first of its kind that you're doing, I understand?
Right.
And the lineups of the speakers, the guests, the dignitaries that you have there is absolutely amazing. So I am going to first ask you, with everything that I'm reading about this, the conference will have participation from over 100 delegates, including ministers, bureaucrats, planners, and industrialists from India and the USA, to give their expert presentations on policy, finance, and technical aspects of infrastructure in India.
Right.
That's really strong. I mean, just reading it, it's strong. Putting it together, it's definitely a job. So tell me a little about that.
See, India now has planned in the 12th five-year plan, which begins 2012 and ends in 2017, a requirement of investment of $1 trillion in
Okay.
infrastructure,
Okay.
of which 50%, which is 500 billion, has to come from the private sector.
Which
And India, and we know that the government doesn't have that much money, so we need to actually engage with the world, which is actually seeking that kind of an opportunity
Okay.
in a growing economy.
okay.
The US, with the current situation that it is in, it needs to integrate with the Indian economy in offering that kind of activity for infrastructure, because we need the experience that US has, the funds that US can provide, long-term funds, because infrastructure is a business which requires long-term funds, because there's a long-term gestation there
Okay.
involved. And so far, the US has been on the sidelines watching and selling equipment to India, whether it be power or nuclear or any of that kind. But I think it's time now that the US, and it is, I think they are already an advanced stage of considering this, that they must engage as developers in our growing economy, take on the risks of developers, and so that you can have people take up airports, ports. Now we've got 500 airports in India supposed to be, of which only 100 actually operate.
So Nitya, this man has a vision. Pratap really has a vision, and this is the first step in this direction. He has been shuttling back and forth between India and America, and this is a great idea that he is going after. I think we'll see more and more out of him.
Absolutely. Hold that thought again right there, Sunil. It's time for us to move into another little break. Don't go anywhere. Come right back.